And I'd like to invite both Mr. Jaishankar and the B20 India Chair, Mr. Chandrasekharan, to please come up on stage. Mr. Chandrasekharan, to please welcome the Honourable Minister with a stole that we have. Thank you, sir. May I request you now to please introduce the session.
Good morning to all of you. Honorable Minister Jaishankar, it's such a great privilege and honor to have you with us for this very important session. I just want to take a minute to set the context. The B20 summit for the last 3 days has been very engaging. We worked over the last 8 months between India and global businesses across 55 countries, more than 1,500 participants, and we have come up with a strong set of recommendations across 9 themes, which we are placing to the G20. You have been at the forefront of managing the geopolitics and have clearly positioned India's role and India's potential to the contribution of the global economy as well as geopolitics. And some of the themes that go across the 9 themes include inclusion, prosperity for the global south, financing for the climate change, the standards required for climate change transition between developing and developed economies, building a resilient supply chain. All of these things become very important in the global context. So it will be very important for us to hear your thoughts on India's role today. We all are very eager to listen to you. Thank you.
Mr. N. Chandrasekharan, distinguished delegates, dear friends, namaskar, good morning. It's a great pleasure to speak to you all this morning on the role of the Global South in the Emerging World 2.0. Perhaps it's useful to begin with the concepts in the title itself. Since 1945, we have seen a steady evolution in the global order that was established after the Second World War. It was initially more political, with decolonization and the independence of many nations. It gradually acquired economic connotations that were accelerated by globalization. As these fused increasingly with factors like technology, energy, resources, connectivity, and even human ingenuity, a different world started to emerge. That is obviously a continuous and unending process. It has also acquired greater cultural and social characteristics. Indeed, that the G20 was established is itself an acknowledgement of that direction. Now, it is, however, an undeniable reality that the international system remains dominated by the global north. This is naturally reflected in the composition of the G20 as well. Perhaps this mattered less when the globalization process appeared to offer more opportunities, but as its inequities and unevenness became more apparent, and then as we saw the COVID pandemic take a horrific toll across the world, the need to focus on developing countries has become more compelling. If that was not enough, the consequences of the Ukraine conflict for global food, energy and fertilizer security has added to complexities. And obviously, trade disruptions, high interest rates and climate events, increasing climate events, have contributed additional factors of stress. The current focus on the Global South emanates from the conviction that these are countries that are truly deserving of special care. But equally, these are also societies under exceptional stress, which, if left unaddressed, would become a serious drag on the world economy. Remember, globalization cuts both ways. Till now, the discourse has largely focused on its optimistic facets, but do consider what the implications are for all of us, North or South, of slowdowns in nutrition, in health, in education, in employment, or even in security. And indeed, when the promises of digitization, connectivity, or technology fall short. When India assumed the G20 presidency last December, we were acutely conscious that most of the global South would not be at the table when we meet. This mattered very much because, as I have underlined, the really urgent problems are those faced by them. To discuss their concerns without providing them a fair hearing appeared extremely unfair. And India itself, so much a part of the global South, could not stand by and let that happen. Therefore, Prime Minister Modi decided to convene the Voice of the Global South Summit in January of this year. We heard from 125 countries directly about their challenges and priorities. And on their behalf, these have been made central to the G20 agenda. Different aspects of these fundamental challenges have been discussed in the finance track and the Sherpa track, or for that matter, the ministerial streams and the engagement groups. And as a result, we have deliberated on issues of debt and finance, on sustainable development, climate action, food security, and women-led development. The core mandate of the G20 is to promote economic growth and development, and that cannot advance if the crucial concerns of the global South in the areas that I have highlighted are not addressed. But having said that, let me step back and bring out some of the structural issues that are today at the heart of the predicament of the global South. Key among them are the concentrations of various kinds created by the last 3 to 4 decades of globalization. For a variety of reasons that range from scale, subsidies, technology, human resources, and strategic choices, the global South was largely reduced to being a consumer rather than a producer. Their contribution very often was to provide resources for manufacturing elsewhere. They not only did not reap the full benefits of economic change, but often ended up saddled with unviable debts emanating from opaque initiatives. This was a gradually unfolding crisis in the making, but one that was accelerated rapidly by the multiple shocks of debt, COVID, and conflict. As a result, the endeavor now is to seek a re-globalization that is more diversified, that is more democratic, where there would be multiple centers of production, not just of consumption. And that is where business can make a crucial difference. We cannot be at the mercy any longer of a few suppliers whose viability could come into question by unanticipated shocks. This was starkly apparent when it came to health during the COVID pandemic, but it pretty much applies to everything else as well. The compulsion to create more resilient and reliable supply chains is a really pressing one. Its counterpart in the digital domain is driven more by anxieties about trust and transparency. The volatility of the last few years has brought home to us the importance of strategic autonomy. We may talk about seeking a more just, equitable, and participative global order, but at the end of the day, that will only happen when we see commensurate investment, trade, and technology decisions. Where India is concerned, our response to this situation is articulated in the goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is self-reliant India. At its core is the Make in India initiative, one that would not only focus on our own needs, but those of others as well. It is paralleled by a strong commitment to make it easier to do business in India. At the same time, our infrastructure is being rapidly developed through the Gati Shakti initiative. Since human resources are such a vital ingredient in a knowledge economy, that too is being addressed through programs of literacy, education, skills, and digitization. And indeed, the mindset itself is undergoing a transformation through emphasis on innovation and startups. And overall, it is the Modi government's commitment to enhance ease of living that can bind all these positive developments closely together. It is the working of this multiple axis in tandem that is now forging a new India. An India that creates its own 5G stack, an India which invents its COVID vaccine, or an India that lands near the South Pole of the moon. So when you reflect on it, the discourse about the global South is essentially about leaving no one behind. But to preach it convincingly, one has to practice it effectively. And that is what India has sought to do over the last decade. During the COVID and thereafter, we have provided direct food support to 800 million of our most vulnerable citizens, and financial support to 450 million. The government's housing program has benefited about 150 million of our citizens to date, and it is growing. Affordable and accessible healthcare is today within, again, the reach of millions and growing by the day. Pension schemes cover 450 million. And the basic necessities of sanitation, electricity, and water will become universal in the very near future. All of this has been made possible through the creation of a digital public infrastructure. Now, I can share a similar story when it comes to the deployment of renewables, to energy efficiency practices, or to the creation of green infrastructure. Today's India is one where the world simultaneously witnesses experimentation, scaling up, deployment, innovation, and breakthroughs. And I stress these developments not only because they solve 1/6 of the world's problems by themselves, but because they provide replicable models for the rest of the global south. So, how has India walked the talk when it comes to the global south? Stress situations normally provide a good indicator of intent and behavior. During the COVID, made in India vaccines were sent out to about 100 countries, and 150 nations imported medicines during this period from the pharmacy of the world. Our own development partnerships have grown very significantly over the last decade, and they extend now to 78 nations across many geographies. 600 projects delivered or under execution are a testimony of our goodwill as much as of our capability. Believing that capacity building is central to global development, we have provided training to 200,000 nationals of more than 160 countries. And our approach is guided by the Kampala principles enunciated by Prime Minister Modi in 2018, which in essence said that the priority of our partners will be the determining criteria. In all of this, India has also been a source of ideas and initiatives focused on the welfare and advancement of the global south. It could be the International Solar Alliance or the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, or for that matter, the One Sun, One World, One Grid, or the One Earth, One Health, or indeed the International Year of Millets, or the Infrastructure for Resilient Island States. We have also stepped forward as a first responder in disaster, emergency, and conflict situations, ranging from Fiji and Myanmar to Mozambique, Yemen, and Turkey. Emerging World 2.0 is one with more engines of growth, a fairer distribution of the benefits of globalization, and greater resources devoted to attaining sustainable development goals and promoting climate action and climate justice. That is not merely a challenge for the policy-making world, but it is even more so for those who shape the real economy every day through their decisions and choices. By prioritizing decisions and choices, I am therefore very glad that the B20 has risen to the occasion. By prioritizing inclusive growth, resilient supply chains, services trade, digital technologies, innovation, and sustainability, it has established itself as a credible partner of governments who are working to the same ends. The theme RAISE, responsible, accelerated, innovative, sustainable, and equitable, RAISE business says it all. Its task forces and action councils have been a practical articulation of what the world must do. The emphasis on ESG in business and African economic integration is particularly laudable given the larger picture that I have presented before you. I commend the endeavors of B20 India and assure you all that these are truly valuable inputs for the considerations of the leaders when they meet in New Delhi next month. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by underlining that our expectation is that the forthcoming G20 summit will provide the inspiration and directions for all stakeholders to move in unison to build a better world. Progress and prosperity can only be lasting when they are shared both within societies and between them. I thank you for your attention.
Honorable Minister, thank you for your kind words and clarity on the role of India and the progress we have made and the role of B20 for the consideration of the G20. Thank you for your time today, and we wish you all the best.